Great. Thank you, Elizabeth. Welcome, everyone. I'm Joe Faxlanger. I am with RockITek as solutions and client exec, here with Victor Ortiz on the line, who is our senior architect. And I'd also like from PKWare, Jim Wyne, to introduce himself. Jim's, oh, you're on mute, Jim.
Thanks, Joe. Sorry about that. Jim Wyne from PKWare. I'm a solutions engineer, and I've been with PKWare for a little over 10 years.
And so, today we're here to talk about Zero Trust, and specifically around the data pillar. I've been in the data protection key management space now for about 22 years. And so I've seen a lot of the capabilities that have been deployed in your agencies. I've helped develop many of them. So if you look back to the Key Secure with SafeNet that came out of Ingrian, one of my early companies, had a tenure at Network Associates with PGP and Gauntlet, and then also worked for Vormetric file encryption, which became part of Payless SafeNet. And then spent 7.5 years helping restart PKWare to move from the Secure Zip and PKZip to a platform for data security with automation. And recently, about a year ago, joined RockITek to help expand the footprint into Zero Trust. So if I can. Sorry, I had to switch control. So when we talk about Zero Trust, look, I mentioned where I came from. The goal's always been to protect the data whenever we've rolled these capabilities, platforms, compliance initiatives. So we started with firewalls, e-policy orchestrators, intrusion, detection and protection. Software-defined perimeters, and now we have Zero Trust. And our actions have typically focused everywhere but the data. So that's not to say that these capabilities are not important. They very much are, but it can take years to do microsegmentation. And sometimes we, look for the easy button, and so we might grapple onto data governance or data management platforms, and then hope it's almost like I liken it to looking through binoculars the wrong way, because we're trying to use the wrong tool to go find where the data is at risk. And so what we've done with this platform, with our portfolio of solutions, is mobilize the threat very, very quickly. And when I say quickly, we have government and industry folks who within 14 to 21 days are able to find, tag, and protect their data. So meeting the OMB and presidential directives, as well as getting a quick win in their Zero Trust portfolio. So how do we do that? At a very high level, what we've done is automated through discovery the ability to find and tag data. So don't think e-discovery, don't think something that's going to scan and bottleneck. We take you through a process of looking at your policy internally, the actual written policy, and then we automate that piece. So when we go out and do a data transformation, and Jim will show that in a few moments, we're actually going to go find you your data if it's sensitive, so PII, personally identifiable. Some agencies do have credit cards, social security numbers. We find it, or even program names, we tag it. And then if it needs protecting, we automatically protect it, and it persists. When you move the data, it doesn't decrypt. And that's a very big differentiator, because it cuts out all of those risk inflection points where the bad guys sit there and try to grab your data. The other thing we'll talk about are things like AIP, MIP. We are very, very focused on helping customers enhance the investments they've already made. It's very important for us to be able to interoperate with DLP seamlessly. And from an MIP, AIP perspective, we want to be able to enhance the controls and policy, simplify it so that you don't have conflicts in policy when you're using MIP labels. We're protecting it at rest and in motion. And most importantly, for folks in the data management, data governance section, you're going to be able to pull very intuitive and enriched information on how your data is used, who's using it, where it's being used, as well as who's been blocked from access of data. So I'm not going to spend a lot of time here. You guys see this every day. I mean, but we wanted to call out, we'll make this presentation available, the types of data and where we're focused. And then hopefully, oh, I turned off animation. And so now I cannot animate my animated slide.
Oh,
There it goes.
there you go. Yeah.
So, this is a typical world we see, right? We've got some private cloud, we've got some on-prem. The important thing that we're doing is, regardless of where that data is used, shared, or stored, we're going to find it. We're not going to bottleneck you. We're going to protect it if it needs protecting. And we're going to keep watching. And so when a user creates a document for the very first time, we are going to automatically inspect it when they close it. And if appropriate, it will be tagged and it will be protected. To give you some examples, we have recently won Zero Trust Awards in Air Force, in an OIG, and in a US court, regional court in the Midwest. These are going to be implemented within 12 to 14 days. And those customers will be able to meet the presidential directive, the OMB mandate, as well as have their first wins in Zero Trust, and then can build off the data they collect from our efforts. So I just want to, this is another slide that shows you some of the architecture. So you're going to see some enterprise managers. We don't require you to use hardware, but there's a very important reason to do that. This gives you separation of the key material from the cloud provider, the ability to create master keys for your databases. So we don't want to mess around with your databases. Most of you are using native data protection, native encryption. But if the keys and the data are in the same place, in the wallet, then someone stealing an admin credential or an admin going sideways has the keys and the data. We put a master key over it, doesn't impact performance. It helps you there. We scale through software, so we also have software versions of the manager. Most of my clients right now are purchasing 2 appliances. They're done by subscription. The benefit there is that it's not hitting your CapEx. The entire solution is subscription. Makes it easy from a contracting perspective. We colo these for folks who don't want anything in a data center at Equinix. And so they've been a really good partner for us, and we're continuing to build out that relationship. So, whether you're hosting or having it hosted, we can help there. You'll see I mentioned true random. So one of the real risks for us that's emerging, and I was on with the Sandbox folks earlier this week, and it was really quite alarming, talking about quantum threat. And so they had some legal experts on there, and the way the laws are written today, they told us that in an industry perspective, if you're not actively testing and working on projects related to quantum safe, the way the laws are today, it actually puts the burden on these corporations that they are liable for a breach when it does happen. And they're predicting 5 years, right? 2.5 if some government gets a hold of it. How do we tackle that? Well, this platform gives you a bridge to quantum safe. You're not boiling oceans. You're not having to change your business. When I say bridge, what we're doing is we're giving you the ability to use true random numbers to get you the highest quality key material today. This has been signed off on by Virginia intelligence community members. It's been signed off by NSA Commercial for Classified. So it's been tested and vetted, and the appliance is actually OEM to PKWare by an In-Q-Tel company, In-Q-Tel backed company. So the investment arm of the intelligence community. So really important from a security perspective, but they've taken it a step further. I'm working with them to utilize the quantum safe algorithms. And so for those of you not familiar with that, real quick background is right now NIST, NSA are saying, look, don't implement quite yet. We want to vet these. They've settled on a number of them that are close. What we're doing is testing it and making sure that we can go application to application. Right now, they have to be homegrown because Microsoft and others aren't opening up these algorithms. They're not, they're not 100% signed off. But we're doing it right now so that we can give you that bridge. When they say, okay, go flip the switch, our customers will be able to flip that switch. And the risk in quantum is largely today around your PKI infrastructure and the protection of your AES encryption keys. And so we feel it's very, very important to be ready for that. And so that's where we're putting the effort in. So I know I went a little further probably than some of you wanted me to on the quantum side, but this is something that you're going to hear more and more about. And we wanted to let you know that we are ready for those types of events. Why, so we're going to let Jim get started on the demo here, but, people, have to make choices on where they're going to invest to try to prevent things. What I can tell you is that some of the numbers we've seen, it's 287 days is the average time that it takes for someone to realize they've been breached. That's a long time. And if you can put yourself in a world where you don't break your applications, don't break your user experience, and the business can operate, but you can be assured that that data is persistently protected, you can move the dial on threat significantly. So I'm going to stop sharing and I'm going to let Jim take over. And are there any questions at this point before we move on to the demo? Jim, while we're going, I'll monitor if there's anything in the chat, and I'm going to turn off my camera.
Thank you. And I was going to do that too, only to save some bandwidth, because if you can see my desktop, I am logged into our demonstration environment, which is running in AWS. So I want to make sure I'm not slowing things down and using too much audio on the, saving some bandwidth there. But thank you, Joe. Appreciate the introduction. Good job on the architectural overview. That will save me some time because that's where I usually like to start. I want to make sure that folks understand as I'm going through workflows and setting up policies, I'll be wearing a couple hats. So it's good that they know when I'm wearing my admin hat versus when I'm wearing my user hat. Joe talked mostly about these capabilities that the PK Protect platform provides, and I'll be showing you a little of everything of this, the way to set up and enforce regulatory compliance or your organizational standards for protecting data. Then I'll walk through some use cases or workflows on discovering data, classifying data, protecting data, and at the end, I'll circle back on the visibility that the organization gains because everything done is captured and provided back in both dashboards and text context that can also be exported to a SIM tool. Just a little bit here to dive a little deeper into the architect that Joe talked about. If you look on the right side of the screen at my graph, there's basically three components to the platform. There's the enterprise data manager that admins use to be able to create the policies, whether they're to go out and discover data and just report back on the findings, or to go out and classify and protect data. But the admins are using the platform to be able to do that. And then once they create those policies, those are pushed out to agents. So if you look below the solid line, we have agents available for Windows and Mac desktops, mobile devices, Android, iOS mobile devices or iPads, Windows, Linux, Unix servers, mainframe, mid-range devices. And we also have a software development kit. So you can take advantage of policies or being able to protect data in stream as a batch process or even an application. So it's a very robust data protection and classification and discovery capability for your entire IT environment. I just wanted to go through the use cases I'll be covering today. I'll start out with a very simple solution for quickly allowing users to protect sensitive data. Then I'll come back and show where you can set up a policy to discover and selectively protect sensitive data. So you take a little more control and rely a little less on users being able to do that or having to do that. And then I'll show more of a full-blown capability of going through discovery, classification, and protection of sensitive data on desktops and file shares. And then I'm going to come back and turn my attention to being able to use MIP labeling in conjunction with automated policies for protecting data. And finally, I'll end up with doing that and showing how you can secure sensitive data when emails are sent both internally and externally, and then wrap up with the reporting within the administration console.
Hey, Jim. So one thing I want to mention, when folks hear agent, there's a couple common questions that come up. So the agent, first of all, is configurable. So you can set the amount of CPU memory it's using. Right. So we're very, very conscious of the fact that you have a business to run and we can't interfere with that. We just need to secure it and make sure that we enhance the experience. So that's one thing. The other thing is, what about my remote users or somebody who gets disconnected? So Jim will go more into this, but we did build this with that in mind, so that you can work remotely. You can, depending on the agency, some want to force a connection at certain times or a check-in, and others want to allow someone to operate offline. So those capabilities exist, and so I know that's something that's a common thread. We wanted to cover that next.
Yeah, those are good points to bring up, Joe. And I tend to use the word agent. It's also a client. You can see the applications running here on my desktop, PK Protect, but it does install an agent, and the agent is down here in my system tray. As a matter of fact, if I go to that and open it up, PK Protect uses Active Directory to authenticate users. We've added support for Azure AD as well. But once logged in and validated to PK Protect, I now have the ability to encrypt and decrypt documents using keys that I have available to me. Now, we haven't really talked much about, when we're protecting data, keys that can be used because PK Protect and the underlying architecture has been around for 20 plus years. There's the ability to use passphrases to protect data. There's the ability to use digital certificates or PGP keys. But with PK Protect, there's also something called a smart key. And this is a key that's created for all the users. Keys can also be created for groups of users. And the value here is that PK Protect manages those keys, so the user doesn't have to worry about what keys to use when they're encrypting documents, and if they're using digital certificates, do they have the private, do they have the public keys? So it really makes it much easier for users to be able to protect their sensitive data. Also, one other thing to point out, since Joe mentioned this, is yes, the client or the agent is doing the heavy lifting. Policies are created, they're pushed down to particular users' agents based if that user is included in that policy. And they're doing all the work, but you can set a performance policy to throttle how much CPU usage that agent is doing, Or if you're running large discovery tasks, you can even set when to run those, which might be preferable to run them off hours. But as I talked about, I'm going to start with a very simple use case. This we see a lot of companies when they first implement PK Protect do, is they want to make it as least disruptive to users as possible. And I think you'll see as I go through workflows, it is very minimally impacts a user's workflow. But they typically set up a folder that users can use to protect sensitive data. So I have this folder called Encrypt. A policy is running that governs this folder. You see documents in here. Word documents, Excel spreadsheets have an overlay for PK Protect that shows these documents are being protected. And if I have other documents that are sensitive, and I put a couple on my desktop just that I'll use throughout the demonstration, but if I copy that into this folder, I'm now protecting that document. And this is, easy for a user to do. If they're working with sensitive data, they may want to put the documents in this folder. That it may be their document folder has the policy managing it, but regardless, when they're working with sensitive data, now it's automatically protected. As you see, to access that, I simply do a one-click or double-click rather. PK Protect decrypts the document using my personal smart key that's being used to protect it, puts me into edit mode. I can change anything I need to. When I save this document, it goes back into the protected state. Now we call this persistent encryption because if I pull this document out, it's still protected. As a matter of fact, if I copy this document to another user's desktop, it's still being protected. Now I've put this on a desktop for James Stewart. Logged into the agent as well, but logged in as a different user, not Jim Wyne. And the key that was used to protect this document was my personal smart key, which means even if James has access to this document, he is not going to be able to open it up. And notice it didn't automatically open. It attempted to. PK Protect came back and said, well, you're not allowed to use that key. So it prompts James to see if he may have a passphrase to open it up. Now, when I encrypted this, I could have also added a passphrase that I could have passed to him to use, but I didn't. So he's not going to be allowed to open up that document. It's going to stay encrypted wherever this travels or lives, and only users who have access to that particular key can decrypt the contents. I'm going to go back to my desktop. So that's something very easy to implement. Just to show you the policy on that, let me put on my administrator cap and log into the Enterprise Manager console. And this is an application that's accessible using a browser. I use Chrome, but you can use Edge, you can use Firefox to access this and log in, provided you're a sysadmin or an administrator, which my credentials to the right show I'm a sysadmin. Let me just show you that policy that I had set up for that encryption. I'm going to go to assignments because I assign this to a set of users. And this was very easy to do. You see this policy, encrypt only, was set up for these 3 users. And here I'm simply saying that I'm in encrypt mode. That's the mode I want to run. For these 3 users, create this folder called encrypt on their desktop. And now anything they put in that will be encrypted with their personal smart key. So it takes 5 minutes to roll this policy out to a group of users, and now they have a way to protect documents automatically. Now let's go one step further. Let's say that we only need to protect sensitive documents, not everything. Well, I have another folder that has a policy running called Discover and Encrypt. You'll notice one file is protected, one is not. That's because the one protected contained sensitive information. And I have a discovery filter set up to scan for PII and PCI data. So now if I copy the information of this, or copy the profile info document in here, notice that was protected. Once again, easy enough to double click, open it up. make any changes I need to. When I'm done, save it back, and that goes into the protected state. The only difference between these two folders, the encrypt and the discover and encrypt, is one is encrypting everything. Discover and encrypt is scanning the file first, looking for sensitive information. If it finds it, it's then protecting it. If it doesn't, it leaves it untouched. Now I want to flip back over to James Stewart's desktop, because you'll notice here, he's the type of worker that puts a lot of documents on his desktop. Some could be very sensitive, not the best practice, but you can remedy that very easily. Now, remember that James has this encrypt folder. He could be putting documents in there to automatically protect them, but you can't always rely on users to follow best practices because they're busy doing their daily tasks and work. So in this case, James is putting documents on his desktop that contain sensitive information. So what we can do to help the organization safeguard that information is let's jump back in. I'll put my systems administrator hat back on, or my security administrator's hat. Let's go back to assignments. And I have one policy I created here called for the desktop, report, classify, and encrypt. And I haven't enabled this yet. You see this hasn't been enabled, but let me show you this very quickly. This policy took a little more time to set up, because not only am I going to create folders or look at two different paths on that user's desktop, but I'm going to go through a discovery. So instead of just encrypt, I have discovery turned on, and I'm going to go through different scans. I'm one scan, but I'm looking for different types of sensitive information. I'm looking to see if the document might contain keywords, organizational words like official use only or for office use only. If that's found, I'm going to implement a remediation policy that classifies that document and then encrypts it. If that's not found, it's also looking if it contains GDPR information or credit card information or PII information, address fields, etc. And based on what it finds, it's going to apply the appropriate classification label and then encrypt the document. So let's go ahead and go back and implement this policy that we have set up for James Stewart. And what this is going to do is remedy that he likes to store documents on his desktop. He doesn't put them in the encrypt folder, but that's okay, because now we're going to set up a policy for him or for his type of users, groups of users, that's going to go through these documents. And it's automatically going to search them to see if they have sensitive data. If the documents contain sensitive information, it's going to both classify and encrypt those documents. And you see that right now that policy is working through the documents on the desktop doing that exact task. Now, anything new that James puts on his desktop will be automatically scanned and protected as well. But notice now with the classification icon overlay, I can actually scan over, I can highlight that tag, and I can see the type of data that's being protected. This has PII information, this as well, PII information. If I come down to this document, this contains GDPR information, etc. It, like I mentioned, it doesn't interrupt the workflow. A double click opens it up so James can go in, do the work he needs to. But now when he closes out of that document, it's automatically being classified and protected with the policy I set up with the PK Protect. Okay, let's jump back to my desktop. And what I want to do now is turn my attention to applying MIP labels and then protecting documents. And what MIP is really good for is content control. So when you have an MIP label, let me open up a document that has a label applied to it. And here you see that this document has a CUI label applied to it. Now I'm the owner of that label, so I have permission to do everything with this document. In a little while, I'll show you the workflow where I send this to another user, this document, and they have restricted content control on what they can do. But with the MIP label, I think even though it provides content control, the downside is you don't even know there's a label applied to it. There's no visual markings. So until the user opens it up, they really don't know the content of that information, whether it's sensitive or not. So what we can do, because PK Protect integrates with MIP, is we can go a step further. We can label and encrypt the document as well. So I have another policy that's running in this folder where I have both that icon overlay to show the type of data provided and the actual document is encrypted as well. So not only with the MIP label am I providing content control, but in conjunction with PK Protect, we're providing access control as well. So if I drop that file in this folder, you see that it was scanned, it's been classified, and it also has the access control protection on it. If I double click and open it up, once again, I have to have access to the key to be able to access and open up the document. Once I do, then the MIP label determines the permissions I have for the content, whether I can copy, whether I can print, whether I can edit this document or only view. And that's because with PK Protect, it integrates with Azure or MIP. It can read in and utilize the labels that are applied. And then I can set up a policy to automatically apply labels and classify, if that's another step I want to take, and then protect that document with strong encryption. You see here the function for MIP, and here's the different labels that have been retrieved and read into PK Protect for being able to apply to a policy. I go over to the labels. Sorry, I was in the DKE keys, but if I go to labels, here's the different labels. Here's the one I've been applying CUI data. There's also other labels available as well. And if I go back here, let me show you one more example. Let me close this down. I have these files that have a label associated with it. Let me open that up real quick. So once again, this one is labeled confidential, but no visual icon overlays. Very easy to apply a visual icon and overlay that. What I'm going to do is I am going to take this file and drop it into another folder that has a policy running that's going to scan the data, determine the MIP label, and then apply the appropriate icon overlay to show what that data inside is storing. So very easy to set up this policy to take an MIP label and then apply a classification tag to it. Now, the next thing I want to show is email. PK Protect also has an add-in to Outlook to be able to scan data in email and take action to protect it if it contains sensitive information. It's very easy to set up a policy for that. You apply your discovery filters, and then what actions the user is either that's enforced for the user or optionally provided to the user. So let me show you a few examples of that. I have a document here, and I've already created these to save a little time. This document contains PCI data. Let me just open it up real quickly. You'll see it contains credit card information. Let me close that back down. And if I go to hit send on this, the policy running is going to pre-scan the subject line, the attachments, and the message body and look for sensitive information. If it finds sensitive information, it's going to give the user the choices they have before they can send this. And the choices for this user are to encrypt attachments before it's sent or to redact the sensitive information. And that's another key capability of PK Protect, is the ability to find sensitive information and then redact part of it. So if I chose redact, and let me go ahead and do that, and I go over to the sent bin, and this information would be redacted before it's transmitted off my desktop. And then of course, when David West receives it, this is what he's going to see as well. But that credit card number, now that the 6 digits there in the middle have been redacted and protected. In this example, I'm going to send a document that has an MIP label associated with it. I haven't added access control to it. It's only con control with the MIP label. I'm going to go ahead and send this to Ian Taylor, but it does contain sensitive information. So once again, I have a policy that's going to kick in, that's going to let the user know that there's sensitive data in that file. Do they want to encrypt before it's sent? They could compress before it's sent, and PK Protect encryption always compresses before it encrypts, but the user can optionally only compress or send without any changes. So this policy has a little different behavior than the one I showed earlier, because this gives the user more options. And that's the beauty of setting up the policies for email, is the organization can control how much lockdown they want to enforce on documents containing sensitive information. I'm going to go ahead and choose to encrypt this attachment. Now notice I didn't have to enter a key for that, because Ian Taylor is an employee. I've already created a key that he and I use together to be able to access encrypted data. So I'm going to go ahead and send that. Let me go over to Ian Taylor's desktop. And see if I can fire up email here. There we go. Sorry, I should have had that opened up already. Save a little time. Oh, it's trying to open. There we go. So let's go into Outlook for Ian, and hopefully that document has arrived. Should be in his inbox. Yep, there it is. So when this was sent, well, I asked to have it encrypted. So PK Protect encrypted that with a smart key that both Ian and I can use to decrypt the document. Once again, simply a double click will allow him to open it, or he could save it to his desktop and open it from there. But once he is able to decrypt the document and open it up, now he can see that there's a label associated with this document, an MIP label. And if I click on view permissions for Ian, you'll see that he has the ability to view and edit the document, can't copy it, is not allowed to print it, can't export it. So he has restrictions on what he can do with this document. And the way PK protects and integrates with MIP really gives complete control over both access to the document and then content control on what the user can do with that document once they receive it. So let me go back to my desktop again. I think I've gone through the different workflows. I wanted to show everything from protecting all the documents by just setting up an encrypt folder, setting up a folder that does this, or a policy rather, that does discovery and encryption, or being able to classify and protect documents on a user's desktop or in a file share, which I have here. So file share that's running that same policy that a group of users can access. Then I came back and showed how MIP labeling can be integrated with PK Protect for automatic applying an MIP label and then providing access or controlling access to that document. What I want to do now is go back into PK Protect, the Enterprise Manager, put my admin hat on again. And I wanted to show the reporting because keep in mind, every action taken by any of the PK Protect clients or agents is captured. So that's all reportable. So you see here, if I go in to the all these line entries or all these events, it's showing me everything that it did for the different users I was working with. Here's a Smart Crypt Encrypt capability or an action. And if I scroll down, I'll see that this document here was encrypted. It's showing me the location of the document. It's showing me, if I scroll further down, the encryption strength, AES 256. It's showing me the key that was used. Jim to Ian is the name of the key. So both of us could use that to open it up. Oh, sorry about that. I apologize. It's showing me the user that ran the event. So every action is captured and recorded. Here's one where we did a classify. And this is where I classified data that I dropped into a folder, or PK Protect rather classified it. But that's all captured and reported on. This can be exported to a SIM tool as well. And one other thing I'd like to show is dashboarding, because what dashboards do is gives me a higher level overview of the actions taken. Here, if I go to my default dashboard called deployment and usage, I'm seeing that there are 179 accounts being protected by PK Protect. There's 376 endpoints being protected. So multiple, or these users have multiple endpoints being protected. We have 210 servers that are running PK Protect as well. And if I scroll down here, I have a chart showing me the number of encryptions occurring on a daily basis, the number of decryptions occurring, number of discovery by pattern, discovery by action. So quite a variety of charts can be created and used. And if I go down to, let's pick one more here. This one is showing discovery remediation by action. For instance, report and classify, report and encrypt. Here's classifications by labels, so the different types of labels being applied. And if I click on one, for instance, this one, report and encrypt, what PK Protect's going to do is drill down and give me more information on that particular part of the pie chart I clicked on.
And so a couple things that are really important about this. So we mentioned before, this is all fed into the SIM. You're able to pick and choose the most important things. Your data management and data governance tools can take advantage of this and the very rich information that we provide, because when we protect the document, we're not damaging or messing with the metadata. We're actually adding to the metadata. And so that's high value information that the data scientists and data governance people can take advantage of to see how data is used in the organization. We also, when Jim was showing the logs, when someone tries to elevate privileges, either an insider or someone who's taken over a credential, we're blocking that, and you're getting alerted right away. And so we have some organizations, they have a threshold that if somebody tries it twice, they just utilize our API and they auto suspend that person. And so instead of, allowing those events to take place and find out you've been had, you're able to block up front. The other piece is that if you do have an event where something was sent inadvertently, or you have some type of exfiltration, you're going to be able to clearly see that data was protected, which data left. It's very, very easy to use, and it makes a huge difference in trying to manage those challenges that we all face.
Yeah, Joe, that's a good point. You mentioned on users that may be attempting to access data they shouldn't. It's very easy to search on that here. I can just key in one of the keywords abort, and you see very quickly only those events where a user attempted to access a document and weren't allowed to because they didn't have access to the appropriate key to do that. That's reported on. So it's very easy to set up an alert and be able to pinpoint down when maybe you have a mischievous employee or somebody's come in and tried to access data that they shouldn't be accessing. Or maybe they should, and now you can remedy that by giving them access to the appropriate keys to be able to decrypt those documents. But it's providing that level of information very easily.
Yeah, and so this is all going on under the hood, right? All these actions, all the policy enforcement. And so, you know, from the classification to the blocking, your users aren't having to make decisions on this. And that's one of the reasons why people with E5 licenses, you know, tend to adopt the PKWare platform, because, you know, MIP, very, very helpful with the stop the print, save as, especially sharing outside the organization. But what we're bringing to the fight to help them is with MIP, they're relying on the individual. So if Jim classifies a social security number and I have a social security number in a document, I can classify it through MIP, but it's going to be classified different because we're two different carbon-based life forms, right? There's no overarching, you know, central policy control. And then when you get beyond a few of those labels, you start to get conflicts and friction. What we do is we allow you to centralize policy and then push that out and appropriately use those MIP labels along with the additional protections and automation that we provide. And so that's why people make that choice to use us with MIP.
Especially when data is stored on the file shares, because you're right, if a user is doing that manually, every user is going to have a little different idea of how that document should be classified or what label to apply. But by setting up the automated policy here, which I have in this folder, and just putting documents in there, they're going to be scanned automatically. That label is going to be applied. The classification label as well will be applied and then protected only for that group of users to be able to access and work with that document. And one thing I didn't talk too much about is when I combine the MIP labeling with the classification tagging, not only am I getting that overlay icon, but I'm getting a header and a footer as well that corresponds to the MIP label. So this is done with the classification assignment for this document. So I'm getting a nice visual on it, as well as the permission restriction on what I can do with this document through MIP.
And all the investments you're doing from identity management, access management, you know, in the user space, you know, that trickles down to us. We're leveraging that through AD and Microsoft capabilities, so that we can make sure it's the right user on the right device, taking the right path, that's accessing the data. To give you an idea of scale, so we've got two of the Fortune 5 financial institutions, 300,000 global users, high transactions, deployed globally, with, you know, near 24/7 requirements for uptime. So we've been out there in large enterprise. We've been out there in government. Give you an example. We've got one organization. They had a million different permutations of caveats. So highly complex sharing and restrictions on data. And Jim and Victor were able to automate that so that instead of people clicking caveats up and down the list, and their help desk tickets were just incredible before we got there, because people would look the wrong way or somebody tap them on the shoulder and they click the wrong button. Now they've classified something above their pay grade and they can't get the report to their boss because security thinks it's a security violation, even though it's not. So we've all seen those instances, and it becomes a vicious cycle. So what we did was we said, hey, look, you know what the program names are. Let us automate this. So they gave us all the program names, and we went and automated based on that. So essentially inverted the Christmas tree and allowed the user to pick the program name. We would do a back check just to make sure it was right. And then we'd apply any appropriate key or keys. Because we are a hybrid crypto system, we're able to, when you drop a file into a folder, anybody else in that share that is supposed to have access, their keys get added, right? And so that makes it very seamless to the user. It makes it very easy, but also very, very secure.
Joe, I think the one question I hear quite often is when we're running discovery or even protection, does it have to be limited to a folder? And the answer is no. You can run discovery on an entire file share, which I think makes a lot of sense to find out where your sensitive data lives in different folders and report on that. And then it might be one policy you implement for the entire file share, or you might be a little more surgical and have different policies based on the type of sensitive data that's being stored in those different folders. But you're getting that information to be able to make those decisions very easily by running that discovery on that entire file share and having it report on those types of sensitive data it found.
That's an excellent point. And so, you know, today we've shown you largely unstructured data, but this capability also works with structured data. So we have the ability, whether it's in AWS or Azure or other clouds, we can go and scan, right, the databases, look for the PII or other sensitive information that you may have. If it's non-production, right, we can mask it. However, masking is not reversible, right? So it's only used for those purposes for test. We then use the key management techniques and capabilities. So we can do things if a customer needs it. We deploy format preserving encryption for, say, a column that's highly transactional, because encrypting the whole database would hurt your performance. Sometimes we do some redaction, right, or obfuscation. We have a variety of these tools, and we don't force you down a road because that's what we sell. We make this platform available so you can pick and choose. We help you with that to find the most friction-free way to meet your compliance and your security requirements. Because at the end of the day, it's your business and we have to support you in operating. And so that's the way we go to market. Let's pause for a second, Jim. We've got a super quiet crowd this time around.
Okay.
Let's see if there's any
questions. I'm not monitoring the chat, so I don't know if you are, Joe. I've got my screen share up.
I haven't seen any chat either.
Okay.
Jim, was there anything else you wanted to show?
Well, I tried to go through the different use cases that we typically help implement. You know, we really didn't get into, we focus more on persistent data encryption versus the other capabilities we can provide with transparent. I don't know if you want me to take a few minutes and show that.
We could show a couple examples if there's
time. Sure. So persistent is what most companies deploy simply because you can, as that data travels, it always stays protected. But what we can also provide is transparent data encryption for let's say you have a library of data that always stays in a fixed place and for research. It's never going to travel. It's never going to be moved. Or if it's moved to a location where it can be persistently protected. But if I open up a folder, Team Apple documents, these documents are being protected by our transparent data encryption agent, but it's protecting at the block level. below the operating system. And a policy then is created to determine what users have access to the data. Now, classification is still being applied, and you see that as well, but it's transparent to the user this data is being protected. Once again, double click opens up the document. And I can get to it. I can make any changes I want, as long as the policy for this location allows me to do that. And like I said, you can set this up for an AD group, individual users that would be allowed to access and work on documents in this location. So this is very easy to deploy, to set up a TDE agent on a file server and deploy that, and then create a policy of what users can access that data. And let's see if I can show the policy real quickly here. And what you're setting up is an access policy. So here's the Team Apples policy right here. And what this is simply saying is, if I drop an encrypted file in there, don't do anything, leave it alone, exclude that from protection. But anything else, go ahead and encrypt, whether it's a Word doc, an Excel spreadsheet, a PDF, JPEG, encrypt it. And then I have some exceptions going on. If a user tries to use Notepad to open it up, deny that. So don't let Notepad be used. But these are the 3 users that have access to the data in that file. And actually, these 2 users, Jim Wyne and Dave West, the actions allowed for them are encrypt and decrypt. If James Stewart tries to access that folder, deny access. So this gets very granular in what you can allow to be done with the data in that location. I mentioned Notepad would be denied access. So if I try to open this with Notepad, let's see if I can do that real quick. You'll see that I can't use Notepad to edit documents in this. And if James Stewart tried to access this, let's see if I have that sitting on his desktop. Yep, here it is. He's denied access to that folder. So once again, very easy to deploy that particular agent to a file share, set up a policy that would restrict what applications or what users can access data in that location. That's something I like to show, Joe, but I usually run out of time and I don't have time to show TDE, but it's it can be a very good assistant to PDE encryption when you have data that's sitting on a file share that stays on that file share for library, for research data, but it's not going to move off of there where it needs to be persistently protected. So it's a perfect solution for that.
Great. So, a couple other things we want to mention. So on the landing page, we have some additional documents, some guidance on zero trust in the data layer from some independent consultants. You can sign up to download that. We have a link to our webpage with some videos of use cases with the different capabilities. We've also got some architecture and other information on that landing page that will be useful for you. There's a few more things I'd like to also cover. Thanks, Chris. But Chris has just posted in the chat the link to get to the other materials that we have available. Let me just share my screen again. Oh, you're going to have to drop off. There you go.
I did. There you go.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So we've really focused at RockITek with our vendor partners, PKWare and Q Labs and JanusNet on working backwards from the mission, right? So rather than saying here's a widget or here's something, go use it, we're really taking a look at how you're doing business, where your requirements are. And then from there, because of the flexibility of our technology partners, we're able to put in front of you a platform that helps you solve these problems and do it in rapid fashion. So because we are looking at how your users traverse the networks and how you use identity and access to data, we're able to better support your efforts than most. And then, you know, as we evaluate the environment and architectures, you know, it's giving you better visibility, and those trust zones within your organization become stronger as we deploy. You know, so what we found is that, you know, there's an incredible amount of lift that organizations are doing right now, and when they go through their checklist of priorities and what they're doing, when they've gone through this process with us and seen what the capabilities can do, we find that we're moving up the stack in the priorities because of the ability to win quickly and also get their arms around the data and give them a much more granular view of the world. So this is just some background on the portfolio partners, and that is the end of my side of the presentation. So if there's any other questions, you know, we're happy to answer them now. Otherwise, we'll give you some time back in your day, and we appreciate you spending the time with us.